The distress signal was old. 3 hours old, maybe 4. Most haulers would have ignored it. Most haulers followed protocol, reported it to the nearest station, and kept moving. Cargo does not deliver itself, and time is money in the Outer Rim. Daniel Reed was not most haulers that he changed course before he finished reading the signal data. His ship, a beat-up transport called the Wanderer, groaned in protest as it swung toward the uncharted moon. Daniel had owned the Wanderer for 11 years. He knew every sound it made, every rattle and hum. Right now it was telling him this was a bad idea, that he went anyway. The moon had no name on any chart. It was a dead rock circling a dying star, the kind of place people only visited when they had no other choice. Daniel brought the Wanderer down through thin atmosphere and followed the signal to a canyon carved into the gray stone. The crashed ship was unlike anything he had ever seen. It was elegant, almost organic, with curves that seemed to flow like water frozen in mid-motion. The hull was covered in scales of some dark metal that still shimmered despite the damage. Selvari, Daniel realized. He had heard stories about them, but never seen their technology in person. They had ruled half the galaxy once, long before humans ever left Earth. Now they kept to themselves, hidden away in their ancient empire, wanting nothing to do with the younger species. What was a Selvari ship doing out here? Daniel suited up and crossed the rocky ground to the wreck. The hull had been torn open by the impact, and he climbed through the gap into darkness. His suit light cut through the shadows and revealed bodies. Selvari bodies. They were tall and slender, covered in fine scales that caught the light like jewels. Their faces were almost human, but sharper, more angular. Thin membranes stretched between their arms and torsos, the remnants of wings that had not helped them survive the crash, all dead. All except one that he heard her before he saw her. A voice calling out in a language he did not understand, weak but clear. Daniel followed the sound deeper into the ship until he found her. She was pinned beneath a collapsed support beam, her legs trapped under twisted metal. Her scales were pale silver, and her eyes were gold with vertical pupils that watched him approach with a mixture of fear and hope. She was young, he thought. Young and terrified and alone. Daniel knelt beside her and examined the beam. It was heavy, too heavy for him to lift alone. But that was not the real problem. The real problem was the heat coming from deeper in the ship. The reactor was failing. He could feel the radiation through his suit, building with every second. The Selvari woman spoke again, and this time her words shifted into broken common. "Please, help me. I am trapped." "I can see that," Daniel said. He looked at the beam, then at his suit readouts. The radiation was climbing fast. In 10 minutes, maybe less, this whole section would be flooded with enough energy to cook them both that he could not lift the beam from out here. The angle was wrong. He would have to get underneath it, use his body as a lever, and hold it up long enough for her to crawl free. But the metal was superheated from the reactor leak. His suit would protect his body, but his arms would be directly against the beam. The woman seemed to understand what he was thinking. "No, you will be destroyed. Leave me." Daniel did not answer. He positioned himself under the beam, braced his legs against the floor, and pushed. The pain was immediate and absolute. Even through his suit gloves, the heat tore through his arms like fire made solid. He screamed, but did not stop pushing. The beam lifted, inch by inch, and the woman dragged herself free with desperate strength. "Go," Daniel gasped. "The exit. That way." She grabbed his shoulder and pulled him with her. They stumbled through the broken ship, past the bodies of her people, out through the torn hull and across the rocky ground. Daniel's arms hung limp at his sides, and he could not feel them anymore. That was probably bad. They reached the Wanderer just as the reactor finally gave out. The Selvari ship vanished in a flash of white light, and the shockwave knocked them both to the ground. Daniel lay there staring at the sky, watching dust settle around them. The woman crawled to his side and looked at his arms. Her golden eyes went wide with horror. "What have you done? What have you done for me?" Daniel tried to answer, but darkness was already pulling him under. The last thing he saw was her face above him, tears running down her silver scales. He woke in the medical bay of his own ship. The woman was there, standing over him with an expression he could not read. Daniel tried to sit up and realized something was wrong. Something was missing. He looked down. His arms were gone. Both of them, removed cleanly at the shoulders. The wounds were sealed, healed over with synthetic skin, but the arms themselves were simply not there anymore. "I am sorry," the woman said. Her voice was soft, heavy with guilt. "The damage was too great. The nerves, the bones, everything. I had to remove them to save your life. I used your ship's medical systems. I hope I did it correctly." Daniel stared at the empty space where his arms should be. 11 years flying cargo. 11 years of independence, of freedom, of being his own master. All of it gone in 10 minutes because he could not ignore a distress signal. "My name is Aelith," the woman said. "I'm a princess of the Selvari Empire, and I owe you a debt that my people take very seriously." Daniel laughed. It was not a happy sound. What kind of debt pays for 2 arms? Aelith's golden eyes met his. The kind that will give you something far greater, if you are willing to accept it. 3 days passed on the Wanderer. 3 days of Daniel sitting in his pilot chair, staring at controls he could no longer use. 3 days of Aelith moving quietly through his ship, learning its systems, keeping them on course towards Selvari space. She brought him food. She helped him eat. She never complained, never showed frustration, even when he was cruel to her out of pain and anger. She simply waited, patient as stone, until he was ready to listen. On the 4th day, he was ready. "Tell me about this debt," Daniel said. He was sitting in the cargo bay, watching stars drift past the viewport. "Tell me what you meant." Aelith sat down across from him. In the dim light, her silver scales seemed to glow from within. "My people have an ancient custom. We call it the binding of sacrifice. When someone gives a piece of themselves to save Selvari royalty, they are owed an equal gift. Not money, not objects. Something deeper. Something that balances the scales of fate. I gave 2 arms. What balances that? New ones." Aelith leaned forward, her golden eyes intense. "But not human arms. Something else. Something my people have not been in a very long time." She told him the history of her kind. Thousands of years ago, the Selvari were different. They were not the elegant, peaceful beings they had become. They were something far more powerful, far more dangerous. They were dragons. True dragons, with wings that could carry them between stars and fire that could melt planets. They had conquered half the galaxy in their time, burning everything that stood against them. But power without wisdom is destruction. The Selvari nearly destroyed themselves in their wars. So they made a choice. They sealed away their dragon nature, became smaller, gentler, weaker. They survived, but they lost something essential in the process. "The old blood still runs in the royal line," Aelith said. "I carry it. My father carries it. My brother carries it. We are the last connection to what we once were." Daniel understood now. "You want to give me your blood? Turn me into one of them. One of you. Not Selvari. Dragon. The transformation will regrow your arms, but they will not be human arms. They will be scaled, clawed, burning with inner fire. And once it begins, it will not stop. You will become what my ancestors were, what we chose to stop being. Why me? Why offer this to a human?" Aelith was quiet for a long moment. "Because you saved me without knowing who I was. You gave your arms for a stranger. My people forgot how to do that. We became so afraid of our own power that we forgot how to use it for others. Perhaps a human can remember what we have forgotten." Daniel thought about his life before the crash. Holding cargo, moving from station to station. No family, no home, no purpose beyond the next delivery. He had been free, yes, but freedom without meaning was just emptiness with better scenery. "Do it," he said. The transfusion was not simple. Aelith had to cut her own wrist and let her blood flow directly into his veins. The moment the first drop entered his body, Daniel understood why the Selvari had feared this power. It was fire. Not heat, not warmth, but fire itself, spreading through him like a living thing. It burned through his blood, his bones, his nerves. It found the places where his arms had been and began to build. Not flesh and bone, but something harder, something stronger. Daniel screamed. He screamed until his voice gave out, and then he screamed in silence. Aelith held him down, her own strength barely enough to keep him from thrashing off the medical table. 3 days of fever, 3 days of convulsions, 3 days of his body tearing itself apart and rebuilding into something new. Through it all, Aelith stayed by his side. She sang old songs in a language that sounded like crackling flames. She held his hand even when his skin grew hot enough to burn her. On the 4th day, Daniel opened his eyes. The pain was gone. The fire was still there, but it no longer hurt. It felt like warmth, like strength, like a sun burning at the center of his chest. He looked down at his arms. They were scaled. Deep crimson scales that caught the light like rubies. His fingers ended in black claws, curved and sharp. When he flexed his hands, he could feel heat building beneath his palms, ready to be released. It worked, Aelith breathed. She was staring at him with something between wonder and fear. It actually worked. Daniel sat up slowly. His body felt different. Heavier, but also more powerful. He could feel muscles he had never had before, strength that seemed to go deeper than flesh and bone. "This is just the beginning," Aelith said. "The transformation will continue. Scales will spread. Your eyes will change. You will become something the galaxy has not seen in living memory." Daniel looked at his clawed hands. He should have been afraid. He should have been horrified at what he was becoming. But all he felt was a strange sense of rightness, like he had been waiting his whole life for this moment without knowing it. "What happens now?" he asked. Aelith's expression darkened. "Now we reach Selvari space, and I must tell my father what I have done. I must explain why there is a dragon aboard this ship. Will that be a problem?" She did not answer, but Daniel saw the fear in her golden eyes, and he understood that the transformation was only the first of many trials to come. Something was waiting for them in Selvari space. Something that had tried to kill Aelith once already, and now Daniel had the power to protect her from it. 2 weeks into the journey, Daniel stopped looking human. The scales had spread from his arms to his shoulders, then across his back and chest. They were deep crimson, darker than blood, and they grew in patterns that seemed almost deliberate. His eyes changed next. The brown faded to amber, and his pupils narrowed into vertical slits that could see heat as clearly as light. Ridges of bone emerged along his spine, small at first, then larger. He spent hours each day learning what his new body could do. The fire came easily now. He could summon heat to his palms with a thought, shape it into flames that danced between his claws. Aelith watched him practice in the cargo bay, her expression shifting between fascination and concern. "You are adapting faster than I expected," she said one evening. "The old texts say the transformation takes months, sometimes years, but you are embracing it." Daniel let the flames die and flexed his clawed hands. "Maybe because I am not fighting it. Your ancestors feared this power. I do not have that fear. Perhaps you should." Aelith moved closer, studying his face with those golden eyes. "The dragons were conquerors. They burned worlds without mercy. The power you carried destroyed civilizations. The power did not destroy anything. The people using it made that choice." Daniel met her gaze steadily. "A knife can kill or it can carve. The tool is not the problem." She did not seem convinced, but she did not argue further. The wanderer was slow, never built for long journeys. It would take another 2 weeks to reach Selvari space at their current speed. Daniel used the time to push his limits. He discovered that his new body could survive extremes that would kill any human. He walked in the cargo bay without environmental protection and felt nothing but mild discomfort from the cold of space leaking through the hull. He cut his palm with a blade and watched the wound seal itself in minutes. And then there were the senses that he could feel electromagnetic fields now, the pulse of the ship's systems like a second heartbeat. He could sense radiation, gravity, the subtle pull of distant stars. The universe had opened up to him in ways he had never imagined. "Your ancestors gave this up," Daniel said one night as they sat together in the cockpit. "They had all this power and they chose to become less. They chose to survive." Aelith's voice was soft. When every dragon could burn a planet, disagreements became extinctions. We were dying faster than we could reproduce. The transformation was not weakness. It was wisdom or fear. Sometimes fear and wisdom look the same. Daniel thought about that. He thought about the fire burning in his chest, the strength flowing through his scaled arms, the predator instincts that whispered at the edge of his mind. He could feel how easy it would be to let that power control him, to become the destroyer the ancient dragons had been. But he was not Selvari. He was human, and humans had learned their own hard lessons about power. "I will not burn anything that does not need burning," he said finally. "I promise you that." Aelith looked at him for a long moment. Then she smiled, small and sad. "I believe you, but others will not. My people will see only what you appear to be. They will see a monster. Then they will learn differently." The attack came without warning. One moment the sensors showed empty space. The next, 3 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly in front of them. They were Selvari warships, elegant and deadly, their hulls covered in the same dark scales as the crashed transport. Aelith's face went pale. "No, they found us." "Who found us?" "My brother's hunters." Her hands shook as she worked the communications panel. "The crash was not an accident. Someone sabotaged my transport. Someone wanted me dead." Before Daniel could respond, the warships opened fire. Energy beams sliced through space, and the Wanderer shuddered as its shields absorbed the first impacts. "They will board us," Aelith said. "They want me alive. My blood is valuable to them." "Why?" "Because my brother wants to become what you are. He wants to restore the dragon nature to our people. But the process requires royal blood, pure blood, and mine is the purest in generations." The Wanderer rocked again. Systems screamed warnings. They had minutes before the shields failed. "Get to the escape pod," Daniel said. "I will hold them off. You cannot fight 3 warships alone. Watch me." He moved to the airlock before she could stop him. The hunger was rising inside him now, the predator instinct that had been sleeping since his transformation. Soldiers were coming to take Aelith. Soldiers who had tried to kill her once already. The dragon in his blood knew exactly what to do about that. The airlock opened. Daniel stepped into the void without his suit, without protection, without fear. The cold and vacuum touched his scales and meant nothing. He could feel the heat building in his chest, pressure growing, fire wanting release. The first boarding shuttle was approaching the Wanderer's hull. Daniel opened his mouth and breathed. The fire that came out was not orange or red. It was white, plasma bright, hot enough to turn metal into vapor. The boarding shuttle disappeared in a flash of light. The soldiers inside did not even have time to scream. Daniel hung in space, fire still curling from his jaws, and looked at the 3 warships surrounding him. "Send more," he whispered. "I am just getting started." The hunters did not expect a dragon. Daniel moved through space like he had been born to it. His scaled body twisted between energy beams, claws finding purchase on the hull of the nearest warship. The metal was thick, reinforced with centuries of Selvari engineering. It peeled apart under his grip like wet paper. He tore through the outer hull and dropped into the ship's interior. Soldiers rushed to meet him. They were Selvari elite, bred for combat over generations, armed with weapons that could kill most beings in the galaxy. Daniel breathed fire. The corridor became an inferno. Soldiers scattered, screaming, their armor melting where the flames touched. Daniel did not chase them. He moved deeper into the ship, following the pulse of its reactor like a heartbeat guiding him home. The ship died when he reached the engine room. One breath, one burst of white-hot plasma, and the reactor went critical. Daniel was already outside, pushing off into the void as the warship exploded behind him. 2 ships left. They were retreating now, accelerating away from the Wanderer with everything they had. Daniel could have let them go. He could have returned to Aelith and continued their journey in peace, but the dragon in his blood whispered different advice. These hunters would report back. They would tell Prince Soreth that a dragon was protecting his sister. More ships would come. More soldiers. More attempts on Aelith's life. The only way to end it was to end them. Daniel chased the fleeing warships. He caught the slower one first, landing on its hull like a falling star. His claws punched through the metal, and he began to tear. The ship tried to shake him off, spinning and rolling, but he held on with strength that surprised even himself. He found the bridge and burned through the ceiling. The crew stared up at him with golden eyes wide with terror. They had never seen a dragon. They had thought dragons were legends, stories told to frighten children. Now one was standing among them, scales still smoking from the fire of their sister ship. "Tell your prince," Daniel said, his voice deeper now, rougher, shaped by the flames in his throat. "Tell him the princess is protected. Tell him to stop hunting her, or I will come for him next." He left them alive. He pushed off from their ship and let them flee into the darkness of space. The message would reach Soreth, and perhaps it would be enough. The Wanderer was damaged but still flying when Daniel returned. Aelith met him at the airlock, her face pale, her hands trembling. "You destroyed 2 warships," she whispered. "You destroyed 2 Selvari warships by yourself." "I let one go." Daniel stepped past her, suddenly tired. The fire in his chest had dimmed, and he could feel the cost of what he had done. Not physical exhaustion, but something deeper. The weight of lives ended, soldiers who were only following orders. "You could have killed them all. Why did you let them live?" Daniel stopped and turned to face her. "Because I'm not your ancestors. I did not burn everything in my path. Those soldiers were tools, not enemies. The enemy is your brother. When I find him, I will deal with him. But I will not slaughter his followers just because I can." Aelith stared at him for a long moment. Then something in her expression shifted. The fear faded, replaced by something softer. "My people chose to seal away the dragon nature because they could not control it," she said quietly. "They believed the fire would always consume them. But you're different. You choose when to burn and when to spare. I am human. We have learned some things about power and restraint." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Perhaps that is why the universe sent you to me. A dragon with a human heart. My brother will not know what to do with you." They repaired what they could and continued towards Selvari space. The journey took another week, and during that time, the transformation completed. Ridges of bone along Daniel's spine grew into small spines. His feet changed, becoming clawed like his hands. Wings began to form along his back. Thin membranes stretched between ribs of bone that folded flat when he did not need them, that he was no longer human. He was no longer Selvari. He was something new, something the galaxy had not seen in thousands of years. "What will your father say?" Daniel asked, as the Selvari homeworld appeared on their sensors. It was beautiful, a world of crystal spires and silver oceans, ancient beyond human reckoning. "I do not know." Aelith watched the planet grow larger in the viewport. "He will be afraid. The court will be afraid. They have spent millennia trying to forget what they once were. And now you will remind them. Is that a bad thing?" She did not answer. But Daniel saw the conflict in her eyes, the hope and fear fighting for control. The landing codes were accepted. The Wanderer descended toward the capital city, toward the palace that had stood for 10,000 years, toward an emperor who would soon learn that dragons still existed. Daniel flexed his clawed hands and felt fire stir at his chest. Whatever came next, he was ready. The throne room of the Selvari Empire was a cathedral of crystal and light. Pillars rose toward a ceiling so high it seemed to touch the sky itself. Thousands of nobles filled the galleries, their scaled faces watching in silence as Daniel walked the long path toward the throne, but he could feel their fear. It hung in the air like smoke, thick and heavy. These were people who had spent millennia forgetting what they once were. And now the past was walking among them, scaled and clawed and burning with inner fire. Emperor Valeth sat on a throne carved from a single massive crystal. He was old, his scales faded to pale gray, his golden eyes clouded with age and worry. Beside him stood Prince Soreth, tall and sharp-featured, watching Daniel with an expression that mixed hatred with fascination. Aelith walked at Daniel's side. She had dressed in formal robes, silver and white, the colors of the royal bloodline. Her head was high, but Daniel could see the tension in her shoulders. They stopped at the base of the throne. The silence stretched. "So," the emperor said at last. His voice was thin but steady. "My daughter brings a dragon to my court, the first true dragon in living memory, and it wears the body of a human." You saved my life, Aelith said before Daniel could speak. He gave his arms to free me from the wreckage. The blood gift was the only way to repay that debt. The blood gift was forbidden centuries ago. Sortha's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. It was sealed away because it is dangerous, because it creates monsters. Does he look like a monster to you, brother? He destroyed 2 of our warships. He killed 37 soldiers. Daniel stepped forward. The nobles in the galleries drew back, a ripple of movement spreading through the crowd. Those warships attacked first, Daniel said. Those soldiers were sent to capture your sister, to steal her blood for a ritual that would make you what I am. He met Sortha's eyes without flinching. You want to become a dragon, prince? But you do not understand what that means. The chamber erupted. Nobles shouted accusations. Guards drew weapons. Sortha's face twisted with rage. The emperor raised one thin hand, and silence fell. Enough. Valeth looked at Daniel with eyes that had seen empires rise and fall. You speak of choices, dragon. Tell me then, what choice would you make with the power you carry? Daniel thought carefully before answering. The entire court was watching. One wrong word could start a war. Your people sealed away the dragon nature because they could not imagine using it any other way than conquest, he said slowly. They saw fire and thought only of burning. They saw strength and thought only of domination. But power is not good or evil. It is just power. The choice is in how you use it. He extended one clawed hand, palm up. A small flame appeared, dancing above his scales. This fire could burn this palace to ash. It could kill everyone in this room, but could also light the darkness, warm the cold, protect the weak. The flame grew smaller, softer, until it was just a gentle glow. Your ancestors made a choice out of fear, but there is another way. The emperor leaned forward. And what way is that? Use the strength to protect instead of conquer. Burn only what needs burning. Be a shield instead of sword. The court was silent. Even Sorth seemed uncertain, his rage cooling into something more complicated. Pretty words, a voice called from the gallery. One of Sorth's supporters, a noble with dark green scales. But words mean nothing. Let us see if this human dragon can back them up. What do you propose? Trial by combat. The noble smiled coldly. Our champion against yours. If the dragon wins, we will listen to his philosophy. If he loses, the princess faces judgment for breaking the blood gift prohibition. Daniel felt Aelith tense beside him. This was a trap. The Selvari champion will be trained from birth, a warrior without equal. I accept, Daniel said. The champion was named Reth. He was 7 feet tall, his scales black as midnight, his body covered in scars from 100 battles. He carried a blade that hummed with energy, ancient technology from the days when the Selvari still remembered their power. They faced each other in the center of the throne room. The nobles watched from above. The emperor watched from his throne. Sorth watched with hungry eyes. Reth attacked first. He was fast, faster than anything Daniel had faced. The energy blade sliced across Daniel's chest, cutting through scales, drawing blood that sizzled with heat. Daniel did not strike back. Reth attacked again. Another cut, another wound. Daniel healed, the scales reforming, the blood stopping. But he did not raise his claws. Fight me, Reth growled. Stop playing games. I'm not playing. Daniel took another blow, this one to his arm. The pain was real, but he let it wash through him without response. I'm showing you something. Another strike, another wound, another moment of healing. The court watched in confusion. This was not combat. This was one man being cut to pieces while he stood and took it. What are you doing? Aelith called out, her voice breaking. Daniel looked at Reth, at the frustration and confusion on the champion's scarred face. I'm showing your people what true strength looks like. Not the power to destroy, the power to endure, the power to choose peace even when violence would be easier. He spread his arms wide, leaving himself completely open. Hit me again, as many times as you want. I will not fall, and I will not fight back. Reth struck Daniel 17 more times before he stopped. The champion stood there, blade trembling in his hands, staring at the dragon who refused to fall. Daniel's body was covered in wounds that healed as fast as they were made. Blood pooled at his feet, steaming with inner heat. But he remained standing, arms spread wide, eyes calm. "Why will you not fight?" Reth whispered. "Because fighting you proves nothing. I'm stronger than you. I could kill everyone in this room if I wanted to. But what would that show? That dragons are monsters? That power only knows destruction." Daniel lowered his arms slowly. "I would rather bleed than prove them right." The throne room was silent. Even Soreth had no words. Then the Emperor began to laugh. It was a dry, cracking sound, the laugh of a man who had not found anything funny in decades. "Well," Valeth said when he could speak again, "that was not what I expected." But the moment of peace did not last. Soreth moved faster than Daniel thought possible. He grabbed Aelith, pulling a blade from his robes and pressing it to her throat. "Enough of this theater," Soreth hissed. "The blood gift was supposed to be mine. The dragon nature was supposed to be mine. I have waited decades for this, and I will not let a human take what belongs to me." Guards rushed forward, but stopped when Soreth pressed the blade deeper. A thin line of silver blood appeared on Aelith's throat. "One more step and she dies. Then I take her blood myself and complete the transformation." Daniel felt the fire surge inside him. Every instinct screamed at him to attack, to burn Soreth to ash before he could hurt Aelith. But the blade was too close. Any attack would kill her too. "What do you want?" Daniel asked, forcing his voice to stay calm. "I want what you have. I want to be a dragon. I want the power that should have been mine by birthright." Soreth's eyes were wild, desperate. "Our people made a mistake when they sealed away their true nature. We were gods once. We could be gods again. And what would you do with that power? What we should have done centuries ago. Expand. Conquer. Take back the galaxy that we ruled before humans and all the other lesser species spread like weeds." Soreth's grip tightened on Aelith. "Give me your blood, dragon. Willingly, or I take hers instead." Daniel looked at Aelith. Her golden eyes were steady, unafraid. She gave the smallest shake of her head. "Do not do it." But Daniel had not come this far to watch her die. "Fine," he said. "Take my blood, but let her go first." "Do you think I am stupid? The moment she is free, you will attack." "No." Daniel raised his clawed hand and drew it across his own chest. Blood welled up, glowing faintly with inner fire. "I am giving it freely. That is how the blood gift works, is it not? It must be given, not taken. If I give it willingly, the transformation will be complete." Soreth hesitated. Daniel could see the hunger in his eyes, the desperation that had driven him to this moment. "Let her go," Daniel repeated, "and I will give you everything you want." Slowly, Soreth released Aelith. She stumbled away, and guards immediately surrounded her, pulling her to safety. Soreth approached Daniel with a crystal vial, ready to collect the blood that would transform him. Daniel let him take it. He watched as Soreth drank deeply, as the fire entered the prince's body and began its work. Then the screaming started. Soreth collapsed, his body convulsing. Scales erupted across his skin, but they were wrong somehow, twisted and uneven. Fire burst from his mouth, uncontrolled, burning the floor around him. "What did you do?" Soreth gasped between screams. "I gave you what you wanted." Daniel knelt beside the writhing prince. "But you forgot something important. The blood gift must be given in balance. I gave my arms to save Aelith. What did you sacrifice? What did you give in return?" Understanding dawned in Soreth's eyes. Horror followed. "Nothing," Daniel said quietly. "You gave nothing. You only took. And the dragon blood knows the difference." The fire burned out of Soreth as quickly as it had come. He lay on the crystal floor, gasping, his scales fading back to normal. The transformation had rejected him. He would never be a dragon. The Emperor descended from his throne, older and wearier than ever. "It seems," Valeth said, looking down at his son, "that there are lessons here we all needed to learn." In the days that followed, Soreth was stripped of his titles and sent into exile. The court began to change, slowly, as word spread of the human dragon who had chosen mercy over violence. Aelith found Daniel in the palace gardens, watching the twin suns set over the crystal spires. My father wants you to stay, she said, to teach our people what you showed them in the throne room, to help us remember a different way to be powerful. Daniel considered it. He could stay. He could help shape the future of an entire civilization. I think, he said finally, that I would rather go back to hauling cargo. Aleph laughed. You cannot be serious. I'm very serious. But I could use a co-pilot. Someone who knows Selvari space. Someone who saved my life when I had no arms. She smiled. It was the first real smile he had seen from her since they met. I have always wanted to see the outer rim. They left the next morning. A human who had become a dragon and a princess who had found something better than an empire. Behind them, the Selvari began to remember. Not the old ways of fire and conquest, but a new way. A human way. The way of choosing when to burn and when to heal.